This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio. I'm Joe Matthew alongside Kaylee Lines. Thanks for joining us. The jury in Hunter Biden's gun trial deliberated today without reaching a verdict. We'll return tomorrow morning as we now assemble our political panel. Rick Davis is back with us, Stone Court Capitol, and Jeannie Shanzano, political science professor at Iona University, senior democracy fellow with the Center for the Study of the Presidency and Congress. They are both Bloomberg Politics contributors. Great to see both of you and have you back together again. Jeannie, are you on pins and needles over this Hunter Biden verdict? We just went through the process here with Donald Trump, but of course Hunter Biden isn't running for president.
That's right, but he is the first child of a sitting president to face criminal prosecution, so it is a big deal. And the fact that we could get a verdict as early as tomorrow, I think a lot of us are watching it very, very closely. He is facing 25 years in jail if he's convicted, so it is a very big deal, and we know it's a big deal to the family. We've seen the First Lady back and forth from Europe, more members of the family in the courthouse today than any day of the trial. So a very big and very personal issue for the Bidens.
So certainly has personal implications, Rick, but also potentially political ones, because he's not just the son of a sitting president, he's the son of a president who is seeking re-election. How do you see this playing for President Biden? On the one hand, he has faced a lot of criticism, whether it's warranted or not, for not stepping in the prosecutions of Donald Trump. So if he doesn't intervene himself in his son's case, potentially that argument would lose some more at least perceived credibility. How do you see this shaking out ultimately, if he's guilty or not?
Yeah, look, I mean, obviously, if he's guilty, we have something to compare it to, right? We just saw politically for the last 10 days what's happened to a former president when he's been convicted. And it actually hasn't had that big a deal, big impact. It's had it on the margin. And, of course, we have such a close race, the margins matter. And we're seeing more and more polling data showing Joe Biden ticking up a little bit in these key 6 or 7 targeted states. So maybe it does have a outcome base. But afterwards, most people were like, well, he got convicted, 34 counts. Wow. We'll see what happens with the sentencing, which will be right before the Republican convention. So I would imagine Hunter Biden would get the same treatment, right? In other words, he's going to get either off or convicted. And if he's acquitted, I think this is much to do about nothing. And if he's convicted, I think he gets kind of the same Joe Biden gets the same kind of treatment, that Donald Trump got, which was, maybe there's a little bit of credibility problems. But I think the key thing is what you said, which is he hasn't intervened and he shouldn't intervene. And if he doesn't intervene, should he get a little bit of credit for that from the electorate, especially his own voters who've migrated to Trump?
Is there a counterintuitive result here potentially, Jeannie, in which President Biden, who has been very loyal to his son here and is set by his side, the whole family, many different members of the family were with Hunter Biden in court, which is something that Donald Trump did not enjoy, with the exception of his 2 sons. In this case, his 2 eldest sons. Is there something for standing by your family member in this case?
Yeah, I think there is. And what I've been watching is the Trump rhetoric on the Hunter Biden trial. And I think one thing to note is that he has not been attacking Hunter Biden. He has been talking about addiction. He talked on Fox News with Sean Hannity the other day about this case, and he talked about it in the context of his own brother who died of alcoholism. So he has taken a hands-off approach, if you will. We've heard that from Republicans who before that were attacking Hunter Biden. So I think they realize what the polls seem to indicate on this case, which is that people see this as a personal, really, really difficult issue for so many families who have faced addiction, and very few of us do not, are in a position where we've never encountered it. And if Donald Trump is recognizing that, I think politically voters are not going to think much about this as they go to the polls.
I wonder if they think more about not paying your taxes, though. Rick, it's worth pointing out, it is not just this case that Hunter Biden is facing. In September, he will be on trial in California for a number of tax-related crimes that he's been indicted of, especially considering the timing of that, September, with an outcome potentially that month or October, getting closer and closer to the election. Is that actually the case the president needs to worry more about?
Yeah, I think so. Timing-wise, more people will be paying attention to what's going on in the presidential race, and that means these tangential issues like Hunter Biden and the cases against Donald Trump, too. would get more attention. What's ironic here, I think, is that you had all these early cases against Donald Trump that now look like they've all been kicked off into, post-election, other than the convictions that he's already sustaining. And here Hunter Biden's going to be the guy everyone's going to be talking about in September and October, as you point out. So, look, it's hard to tell. It's such new turf for anybody like me who's been a political junkie for 40 years that you don't normally have this kind of a conversation about presidents and sons of presidents being convicted. As Jeannie said, this is the first time. So I really don't know if it's going to have a salient impact politically. And when it does, we won't be surprised. But if it's not, I think that'll be just more that we learn about the future of politics, which is, people see these legal problems as separate from political problems.
If you're Joe Biden, though, you're the president, and you're going to the G7 this week. Jeannie coming off a visit to Normandy in which she had a couple of very high-profile speeches. Does that mean an automatic win in the end for Joe Biden this week as Donald Trump, we'll talk about this a little more later, meets with his probation officer?
Yeah, I mean, this is where the team wants to be, the Biden campaign. They want him to be doing his job, the job of the president, meeting foreign leaders, protecting the United States, talking about democracy. Certainly nobody wants their candidate talking to a probation officer. That said, we saw the polls. We've had 3 big polls since the conviction, and it has moved the numbers very, very little. I mean, do the margins matter in this case? Absolutely. But it is not like people have been fleeing from Donald Trump. Quite the contrary. The polls have remained relatively stable, and he's raised an awful lot of money. So the conviction, and I think the probation discussion today, is not going to have much impact. Joe Biden needs to be in the U.S. as soon as he's able, talking about the economy, the economy, the economy. There was a great story in Bloomberg today about the cost of owning a home up 24%. That is the kind of thing that's killing Joe Biden at the polls that they need to address.
All right, Jeannie and Rick are going to be sticking with us. Our political panel will be back for more on Donald Trump, not just that probation meeting that happened today, but of course after a rally in Las Vegas over the weekend in which he floated the idea of not taxing tipped income. We'll have more next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio.